Shared understanding PM Modi's visit to France had broader strategic implications. During his visit to France last week, Prime Minister Narendra Modi stated that India and France could be a force for global transformation. The statement carries significant geopolitical context for him and his host, French President Emmanuel Macron. The visit took place just before Mr. Modi's scheduled trip to Washington, where the Trump administration's unpredictability has reshaped global dynamics. This was Mr. Modi's sixth visit to France as Prime Minister, while Mr. Macron has travelled to India three times, fostering their visible rapport. In Paris, they co chaired the AI Action Summit before travelling to Marseille. There, they inaugurated the new Indian consulate, visited a multilateral thermonuclear reactor project, and toured a shipping company. Their discussions focused on strengthening a defense partnership, reviewing deals on missiles, helicopter, and jet engines. India also offered Indian-made rocket launchers. Days after Modi government announced amendments to India's nuclear liability laws, both countries agreed to develop small modular reactors and advance the long-stalled civil nuclear deal. The leaders discussed global conflicts including those in Ukraine and Gaza. They also reaffirmed their commitment to advancing India Middle East Europe economic corridor, an initiative in which both countries play a key role that is contingent on West Asian stability. Mr. Macron referred to India and France as two great powers that are closely aligned, emphasizing that while they seek a stronger engagement with US and China, neither wishes to be dependent on any one power. Beyond bilateral ties, Mr. Modi's visit had broader strategic implications. The leaders addressed global challenges such as climate change, trade disruptions, and evolving risk posed by AI. However, key issue both sides remained discreet about what was on how to navigate relations with Washington. While both leaders seek to maintain positive ties with Mr. Trump, they are wary of his unpredictable policies, including his approach to tariffs, economic measures, and his unilateral stance on global conflicts. Mr. Macron, in an interview after Mr. Modi's departure, did not hold back in criticizing US policy on Gaza, asserting that what is needed there is a humanitarian operation, not a real estate operation. Mr. Macron, in an interview after Modi's departure, did not hold back in criticizing US policy on Gaza, asserting what is there needed is a humanitarian operation, not a real state operation. Mr. Trump's independent dealings with Russia and China, often made without consulting key allies in Europe and or the Indo-Pacific, and his disregard for the multilateral order could become a longer-term subject of discussion between Mr. Modi and Mr. Macron. In the months ahead, India and France will likely find greater alignment in the shared understanding of global challenges and the pursuit of collaborative solutions. Engaging Russia, Trump's overtures to Putin have spurred both hopes and fears. President Donald Trump has opened the door to negotiations with Russian President Vladimir Putin over ending the war in Ukraine, in equal measure, spurring hopes for peace and fears that Moscow would use the opportunity to manipulate the situation to its advantage against the beleaguered Kiev. While Mr. Trump wrote on social media that the 90-minute call, both leaders concurred on the desire to stop the millions of deaths taking place, and Washington and Moscow would work together very closely. Russia noted that Mr. Putin had expressed readiness to receive American officials in Russia regarding areas of mutual interest, including, of course, the topic of Ukrainian settlement. Mr. Trump's call, including specifics on a ceasefire and the possibility of their meet in Saudi Arabia, represents a break from the status quo, which, since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, has seen the Kremlin face diplomatic isolation and crippling Western NATO sanctions. Mr. Trump's call, including specifics on a ceasefire and the possibility of their meet in Saudi Arabia represents a break from their status quo, which since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022 has seen the Kremlin face diplomatic isolation and crippling Western NATO sanctions. Although Mr. Trump's predecessor, Joe Biden, had in this context made his administration's view on Mr. Putin clear when he described the Russian president as a murderous dictator and a pure thing, Mr. Trump had promised even during the campaign leading to the 24 presidential election that he would end the war within 24 hours after being sworn into office. On one hand, if Mr. Trump's efforts come to fruition, it would mark a breakthrough in terms of bringing Mr. Putin to negotiating table, an outcome that has so far appeared impossible given Moscow's resolve to press on with its war plans. On the other, the terms of the negotiation hinted at so far by the Trump administration makes it likely that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will have to accept an palatable outcome. This appears inevitable given that US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth suggested that no US troops would be committed to Ukraine in any future security arrangement, that Ukraine would not be invited to join NATO, and that the option of Ukraine reverting to pre 2014 borders prior to Russia annexing Crimea would be virtually ruled out. Indeed, Mr. Zelensky would not be wrong to assume that US has promised to sustain NATO support for Ukraine for as long as it takes has been unequivocally betrayed by the Trump administration's stance on the subject. This denouement this denouement is likely to have a profound and damaging impact on the security and economy of not only Ukraine but also of the EU, given that the White House has de facto made Russian territorial aggression as a European problem and sees Mr. Putin as a less concerning threat than undocumented migration and trade deficit. The issue raised by the Congress party, Congress Slam Center over Adani project near border, is likely to be dismissed by a large section of the public as yet another example of the periodic Adani baiting indulged in by the opposition parties. However, the subterfuge used by the government to hand over the land and project to the private party is intriguing. That the rules governing construction near the border were relaxed, or is shocking. The issue smacks of favoritism and sorry, raises serious security concerns along the Pakistan border. The government has to come clean. The investigation by the Guardian not only goes through reinforce the perception that by some that rules can be changed even if it means making compromises as far as national security is concerned. This is disturbing while the government of the day has allowed this private group near monopoly in several critical infrastructure sectors, like the relaxation of military protocols, which can potentially compromise national security, is a move that must be resisted. The days when political parties fought elections on policies and ideologies have long passed. It is now the age of freebies and corresponding political outbidding. When will our politicians become selfless and think of putting in place opportunities for the people to thrive by working? The torture that some first year students experienced at the Government College of Nursing in Kottayam in the name of ragging was terrible to read. It is appalling that the authorities can feign ignorance. The brutality that first year students undergo in the name of ragging has been a recurring problem in Kerala and in many parts of India. The government must end cruelty on campuses. The Jammu and Kashmir administration has not addressed the issue of pay anomalies for hundreds of non-gazetted employees in the five new government medical colleges in Jammu and Kashmir. Cabinet-wide, its order has sanctioned 3,000 posts for establishment of five colleges. 675 each for Kathua, Rajouri, Doda, Baramulla, and Anantnag. Gazetted employees of the Health and Medical Education Department face similar issues. Pay scales, nomenclature, and even recruitment rules of the government medical colleges in Udhampur and Handwara differ from these five colleges. Employees are worried that without service rules, they will be deprived of time bound promotions. The framing of rules for all medical colleges, especially new medical colleges in the UT, must be done as soon as possible. World Radio Day, February 13, has passed, but it was an occasion to recollect those golden days when radio program sets and radio programs filled our homes and hearts with joy. There were hardly any house that did not have a Bush, Murphy, Philips, or a Nelco radio set. Some of the brands that ruled the radio market. One wonders whether today's AI generation would even know about the magic that radio offered. The average Indian and Akashvani were inseparable. But how can one forget the program by Radio Ceylon? One also had RJs. There was Amin Sayani, who still has no match. China's dam project opens the floodgates of concern. The planned construction by China The planned construction by China of a massive hydroelectric dam on the lower section of the upper stream of the Yarlung-Zangbo River in Tibet. Lower section of the upper stream of the Yarlung-Zangbo River in Tibet has become a matter of concern for India due to its potential impact on the local environment and spillover, the flow of water downstream, and bilateral relations. Originating in Tibet, the Yarlung Jangbo is called the Brahmaputra after it reaches the Indian state of Assam, where it meets its important tributaries. In India's Arunachal Pradesh, it is called the Siang. The Brahmaputra is a part of everyday life of millions of people from India's northeastern states, and Bangladesh. China's decision to plan a dam on Yarlung Zangbo is a part of its broader strategy to transition from coal to renewable energy sources, particularly hydroelectric power, as outlined in its 14th Five-Year Plan. China aims to reduce its reliance on fossil fuels and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. While this transition is commendable, the reliance on large-scale hydroelectric projects raises significant concerns. While the dam project aligns with China's ambitious energy transition goal, its serious implications for India cannot be understated. The construction of dam raises critical legal issues. Under international water law, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Non-Navigable Uses of International Watercourses (UN Watercourses Convention 1997) emphasizes principles of equitable and reasonable utilization. These principles are essential in ensuring that shared water resources are managed sustainably and equitably. However, China and India are not signatories to the UN Watercourses Convention, nor do they adhere to a robust framework of domestic laws governing transboundary rivers. The official documents on water published by the Chinese government maintained that Beijing is a benevolent upper riparian that follows first the principle of international cooperation, and second the principle of people orientation, third the principle of sharing rights and obligations, and fourth the principle of equal emphasis on development and protection. However, many of the China's lower riparian states accuse it for using water as a powerful tool. India, which is one of the lower riparian states, depends on rivers that originate in Tibet for one-third of its river water supply. Due to the increasing securitization of water and the rise of assertive military nationalism, a number of Indian political analysts say China poses a serious water threat to India, making it vulnerable to unilateral actions. India has regularly expressed its concerns about the projects on transboundary rivers. The memoranda of understanding between India and China on the sharing of water data about Satluj and Brahmaputra rivers have expired now. With ties improving between two countries, there is a possibility that MOUs could also be renewed. There is an expert level mechanism (ELM) to deal with water related matters that meets regularly. In the absence of a concrete agreement, the ELM's role in managing water related matters between India and China is significant. Due to increasing securitization of water and rise of assertive military nationalism, a number of Indian political analysts say China possesses a serious water threat to India. India has regularly expressed its concern about projects on the transboundary rivers. The MOU between India and China or sharing of water data about Satluj and Brahmaputra have expired now. With the ties improving, there is a possibility that MOUs could be renewed. There is an expert level mechanism to deal with water related matters. The proposed dam is being constructed in one of the world's most seismically active regions. The risk of earthquake poses significant threat to the stability of the structure, with the possibility of catastrophic consequences for both upstream and downstream areas. For instance, the earthquake in Tibet in January 2025 led to the death of 120 people while over 150 were injured. Additionally, the construction of such massive dam disrupts river ecosystems, it alters sediment flow and threatens biodiversity in the river basin region. The potential environmental damage extends to the loss of habitats for aquatic and terrestrial species and increased riverbank erosion. Such a dam would also have impact on Bangladesh, which the Brahmaputra enters from India. However, Bangladesh has not expressed any serious concerns over the hydropower. The main reason is growing divide between Dhaka and New Delhi ever since the fall of the Sheikh Hasina government in August 24. But this is an issue that will not just affect Bangladesh, water related issues in Tibet will affect the other lower riparian southern southeastern states such as Nepal, Bhutan, and Pakistan. To deal with this situation, it is better to have a water negotiation plan for the region. However, given the political situation in South Asia, it is tough to imagine a water alliance between the countries. Receiving water from Tibet and absence of an active regional organization halts South Asia from developing a collective strategy to manage transboundary rivers and conduct negotiations with the upper riparian country. An absence of an active regional organization an absence of an active regional organization halt South Asia from developing a collective strategy to maintain transboundary rivers. Bilateral ties between India and many of its neighboring countries are not in good shape and see fluctuations frequently. The water issue between India and China cannot be delinked from their day-to-day political relations because of the influence of politics on water-related decisions. The recent India-China diplomatic engagement raises hopes for renewing lapsed MOUs and improving trust through information sharing on Tibet origin rivers. China has reiterated that the dam on Yarlung Zangbo will not affect water flow to India. However, New Delhi has expressed its concerns to clear any doubts or concerns that the lower riparian states might have. The ELM would be a better platform. The problematic globalization of medical education, strange things are going on worldwide in the area of medical education. On the one hand, there appears to be a shortage of medical doctors, while at the same time, governments and in case also medical doctors themselves opposed increased access to the study of medicine. As a result, there has been increase in international mobility and medical students from high, mid, and low income countries. While once medical education was international, it is now nationally regulated, but at the same time becoming internationalized. Because of national and global health need, it is worth examining this particular global medical environment. No one knows how many international students are studying in medical schools outside their home countries, but a conservative estimate might put the number to be more than 2 lakh, many of them in institutions and countries with questionable equality of medical preparation. To give an indication, Ukraine before the Russian invasion had 24,000 medical students from abroad, mainly but not exclusively from India. India is an interesting example. The country has severe shortage of doctors. The demand for places in medical colleges is considerable, and as a result, competition for places is intense. Approximately annual 2.3 million students sit for the National Medical School entry exam, but only 1 in 22 successful candidates is able to enter the country's 700 plus medical colleges. The fierce competition for medical seats in India has compelled many students to explore opportunities abroad. More than 20,000 Indian medical students go abroad to study. With limited government medical seats, high tuition fees, studying medicine abroad has emerged as an affordable and practical alternative for Indian aspirants. Countries such as Russia, pre-war Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Philippines, China, Mauritius, and Nepal have become attractive destinations. Interestingly, some of the institutions in foreign countries are controlled by Indians. One such institution is Manipal College of Medical Sciences in neighboring Nepal. The country's first private medical college, which was established in 94, it is operated by Manipal Group, Bengaluru. The American University of Antigua College of Medicine is Caribbean Medical School is a division of Manipal. This reflects a broader strategy of Indian education groups expanding their footprint overseas to meet the growing demand from Indian students. However, studying medicine abroad comes with its own challenges, particularly for those who wish to practice in India. Indian students who complete their programs for foreign institutions must clear the national licensing examination to qualify for medical practice in India. They are also required to complete a medical internship upon their return. Similar Indians wishing to practice medicine in other countries must satisfy licensing and other requirements of those countries, and one can find Indian doctors throughout the world. This illustrates that governments are aware of the varying standards of medical education around the world. In a significant announcement during the Union Budget speech in February 25, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman highlighted the government's achievement in medical education. She stated that the government has successfully added nearly 1.1 lakh undergraduate and postgraduate medical education seats over the past decade, an increase of 130%. She also revealed plans for further expansion, 10,000 seats in 26 and 75,000 seats in the next 5 years. The case of medical education in India illustrates the problematic phenomena of students leaving the global south, in particular South Asia and Africa, to study medicine in other middle income countries and often remain abroad. But the trend is broader. For many years, students from Western countries such as France, Germany, and Netherlands and Norway have been going to neighboring countries for their medical studies due to lack of access at home. Romania, where medical study is provided in French, Hungary, and Poland are common host countries. Hungary and Poland also receive medical students from the United States. Thousands of US students study medicine in these two countries, as well as Ireland and Caribbean and the United Kingdom. Medical programs in Central and Eastern Europe as well as Central Asia cater to diaspora students and teach in English. Medical University of Warsaw, for instance, has medical study programs in both Polish and English. Currently, due to lack of national funding for places at their home universities, around 3,000 Norwegian medical students receive scholarships to study abroad, mainly in Central and Eastern Europe. In other words, the phenomena of foreign medical education is widespread, almost completely unknown, and unregulated. Where entire medical schools are devoted to international enrollments, they are almost exclusively for profit institutions. Medical schools established in non-English speaking environments such as Poland and Ukraine offer English medium medical curriculum to attract high fee paying international students. As the recent budget speech shows, the government is starting to see the problem, but the solutions are expensive and meet opposition from inside the medical establishment, which fears deterioration of their privileges and elite status. Yet, with an aging population, the need for quality medical doctors will only increase. The growing number of students looking for medical education abroad illustrates a potential, but there is an overall lack of quality control. More attention is needed on this key challenge. Is appointing ad hoc judges a viable means to reduce backlog? The Supreme Court on January 30 permitted high courts to appoint retired judges on an ad hoc basis to address the mounting backlog of cases. However, these judges were authorized to hear only criminal appeals as part of the bench led by a sitting judge. Is the ad hoc appointment of judges a viable remedy for reducing pendency? Justice Rajiv Shagdhar and Shradhan Farasad discussed the question in a conversation moderated by uh, Arat- Aratrika Bhaumik. Is appointing ad hoc judges a viable remedy for reducing pendency? The move is commendable. The Supreme Court first endorsed the appointment of ad hoc judges in its 2021 ruling in Lok Prahari versus Union of India, though such a measure should have been introduced even earlier. As of 2025, high courts were burdened with a staggering backlog of 62 lakh cases. However, with only three recorded instances of such appointments, the practice has failed to gain traction. Now that the Supreme Court has revisited the issue, there is renewed hope for implementation of concrete and lasting reforms. The Constitution allows the Constitution allows for appointing ad hoc judges in both Supreme Court and High Court for a reason. However, my concern is that these appointments require presidential approval, making government cooperation crucial. While the judiciary may propose candidates, their appointment ultimately depends on the executive willingness to act. Since ad hoc judges are not typically assigned politically sensitive cases, I am hopeful that the government will approve these appointments without delay. Is it more prudent to first address challenges in the regular judicial appointment process? In our 75-year constitutional history, no policy measure has been introduced to address the docket crisis systematically. We will have to wait and see how this initiative unfolds. However, government's handling of regular judicial appointments remain a concern, with several deserving judges either overlooked for elevation to the Supreme Court or appointed as High Court Chief Justices far too late. This issue requires urgent redress. The appointment of ad hoc judges is unlikely to interfere with the regular judicial appointment process, as both operate independently. Ultimately, it is the common litigants who bear the brunt of judicial delays. From personal experience, no matter how much effort one exerts, there is rarely enough time to adjudicate each case satisfactorily. Expediting criminal appeals would also benefit the government by reducing the financial strain of maintaining overcrowded jails filled with under trials. However, for this measure to be truly effective, chief justices must take a proactive role. The real challenge lies in identifying a cohort of candidates with impeccable integrity and strong technical expertise. Only once this hurdle is overcome does the government's role come into play. The Supreme Court has previously found the ad hoc appointment process cumbersome. Are any reforms needed? To ensure these appointments achieve their intended purpose, the process must be simplified. The Chief Justice of the relevant High Court should directly recommend a candidate to the Supreme Court Collegium after securing their consent. The Chief Justice of the relevant High Court should directly recommend a candidate to the Supreme Court Collegium after securing their consent, after which Collegium can forward its recommendation to the government. The Lok Prahari verdict also sets a 3-month timeline for completing the progress. It may be prudent for the Chief Justice to secure some form of pre-approval from the centre before making recommendation. However, subjective ad hoc appointees to an intelligence bureau clearance would be unnecessary and counterproductive. As retired judges, they may be discouraged by some scrutiny, and the added procedural hurdle would only lead to further delays. Ad hoc appointments should follow a summary process. As retired judges, they have already gone rigorous vetting, not just by the government but also by legal fraternity. Therefore, the appointments should be largely uncontroversial. Would these appointments hinder the career progression of senior judges? No, they will not. Ad hoc judges serve for a limited term of 2 to 3 years and do not compete with the sitting judges. Their appointment does not affect the seniority of High Court judges for elevation as Chief Justices or to the Supreme Court. It is also in no way impacts promotions. Article 224A of the Constitution clearly states while ad hoc judges exercise the same judicial authority, they cannot be deemed to be judge of that High Court. Since they are not eligible for elevation, their appointment does not impact any other sitting judges. These appointments also do not affect the elevation of service judges in the distinct judiciary. Most high courts are already functioning below their sanctioned strength. As of February 125, there were 367 vacancies against a sanctioned strength of 1400 judges. A judge cannot effectively perform judicial duties without essential personal stenographers, private secretaries, court masters. The government must guarantee these resources. It could perhaps consider assigning more law researchers to ad hoc judges, giving their primary focus on judicial work rather than administration. This should not pose a major hurdle if the government is truly committed to reducing arrears. It must allocate the necessary budget for the greater cause. As Justice Shakhadhar pointed out, the key issue is the executive's willingness to cooperate. Most high courts have already ample space that could be repurposed into additional courtrooms. While some personnel may need to be reassigned or appointed on an ad hoc basis, these are logistical challenges that can be easily addressed. Justice Shakdhar, does the system adequately incentivize meritorious judges? You are right, persuading judges to return to the system will be challenging. Much will depend on the perks and privileges offered financially. Arbitration and independent practice are far more lucrative alternatives. In fact, I hear the Supreme Court is struggling to find suitable candidates for tribunal vacancies. Even appointing senior lawyers as ad hoc judges presents a major hurdle. After serving a stipulated term, they are barred from practicing in the same high court. This forces them to relocate to another high court or limit their practice to the Supreme Court. which is difficult for those based outside Delhi. Do such appointments pose any concerns related to judicial independence? In my view, judicial independence is ultimately a state of mind. The mere fact that a judge was practicing at the bar until recently and may return to it in the near future does not necessarily undermine their independence. Traditionally, judges were expected to remain isolated from society and at the bar, but that notion has evolved arguably for the better. Social interactions do not inherently compromise judicial independence. One can meet someone socially one day and face them in court the next, yet still adjudicate based solely on the merit of the case. If the right candidates are chosen, there should not be a problem. A judicial appointment comes with a legitimate expectation of rising through the ranks. However, the system does not always reward the most hardworking or capable judges, leading to dissatisfaction. With ad hoc appointments, this concern does not arise. There is no aspiration for higher ranks, one serves for the limited purpose.